that's something that investors are being very, very cautious about. Kaya even if we believe that the property sector will perform well in the future and the bigger property companies will survive this pandemic, we cannot definitively say when. So as an investor, you have to be prepared, especially if you're not using technical analysis. If you're not riding the momentum, if you're not going with where the demand is, you have to be prepared to hold for a longer period of time.
Lakers Nuggets.
Lakers.
Jordan LeBron.
Jordan.
Investing trading.
Trading.
Dividends capital appreciation.
Capital appreciation.
PLDT Globe dito.
Globe.
Now dito.
Dito.
Wait longer, stay in cash.
Stay in cash.
10 million pesos earning 10% or 1 million pesos earning 100%.
1 million pesos earning 100.
Overdiversified, underdiversified.
Underdiversified.
Banking stocks, property stocks.
Property stock.
Love or money?
Love, syempre.
Hey guys, we are in for a very special treat. He's been in the podcast several times before. Sobrang galing na trader from Davao. We have Robbie Samson back in the podcast. Robbie, how are you? How's everything?
Hey Marvin, good afternoon. So nice to be back, no? So thankfully we're doing well over here. No, things are settling down here naman in Davao. The economy is starting to pick back up. Kaya medyo gumaganda na ulit yung activity, medyo sumasaya na ulit yung vibe around the city. We're doing really, really well.
Glad that things are getting better, no? So, I'll get straight into the action. September 2020 na. Parang walang nangyari, pero parang 6 months na yung nakalipas. We are 6 months from the big drop nung March already. We are not at the cheapest point. We are also very far from the all-time high nung 2018. What's your sense on the market right now?
The market right now is still digesting what's possibly going to happen in the near future. The negative sentiment surrounding the pandemic seems to be dying down a bit, but it's not also a given that things are going to start getting back to normal quickly. So it might take a while for us to fully recover from where we were before this pandemic hit. Kaya that's something I think that investors are being very, very cautious about. Because while things are improving naman, it seems like we cannot say definitively that we are out of the woods. Kaya very, very cautious pa din. I think it's being reflected in the volume, in the mere fact that the index is essentially just trading sideways for a month or so now.
The market kasi moves based also on sentiment and people's perception. And there's a big perception that the third quarter and the fourth quarter GDP will be better than the second quarter GDP of 2020. At what percentage do you think na pag natamaan natin to, it will cost more people to buy? Or if hindi natin to natamaan, we're worse off, we might even go down also. Is there a figure in mind that you could have that may cause people to be more bullish? Or is there something that it may cause people to be more bearish based on what's happening?
By the mere fact that nag-open up yung economy natin the past few weeks, essentially that signals that the economy is going to perform much better than the second quarter. So it's a given, and that's why I think it's priced in na sa current index natin. So the next thing is we have to watch out for is whether the third quarter GDP numbers will be better than expectations. And I think the current expectation right now, the forecast right now, the consensus is at around 2.5%. So if our GDP, third quarter GDP ends up at around that number lang din, even if it's higher than the big drop nung second quarter, it might not cause the market to go significantly higher because everyone is kind of expecting that already. So I think the catalyst that will move us to greater heights, at least in this particular setting, is if we significantly outperform this 2.5% GDP growth figure. I don't think there's a set figure for that naman, but siguro 3.5, 4% or something higher, something that's really unexpected, a positive surprise for a lot of people. So that's what it would take for us to, I think, from a technical perspective, break out of 6,100. If enough people believe na we will be able to significantly outperform the forecast of 2.5% for the third quarter.
Meron bang kinalaman, in your opinion, there's so much takes into this that, of course, foreign funds are pulling out. Does it also have a correlation to what's happening to the US markets, that we have to wait for them to cool down first before we actually see a large amount of funds flowing back in? Kasi yung thing about the US markets, parang walang coronavirus eh. Totoo naman, nag-drop sila nung March. All-time high sila February. Nag-drop nung March, pero a lot of, especially mga tech-related companies, they went higher pa than the all-time high nung February. Do we look for that as a signal that, parang tapos na yung run sa States, funds might come back, or will it be purely driven by economic data in the Philippines?
No, actually that's a very good observation. So it really does play a factor, especially in our market, which is relatively small compared to other markets globally. A lot of our movement is generated from foreign funds. So it makes sense na pagka medyo na-extract na nila, when they are able to extract the value that they are expecting from their investments abroad, it's possible that they will move on to the other laggards, laggard market. One of is the PSEI. So it's highly likely that once the US market cools down, they might divert the funds back to us kasi we've been kind of lagging against other Southeast Asian stock markets din naman. So, meron tayong opportunity because we're still expecting naman good improvement as the economy reopens. One advantage lang siguro is that the US stock market has a very robust tech sector, di ba? They have an index, they have the Nasdaq. So, talagang it's very, very clear that tech stocks are set to benefit from this pandemic. And so there's a lot of positive sentiment going on kasi they have places abroad where they can reallocate their funds that are in sectors which are expected to grow over the near term, especially despite the existence of this pandemic.
Knowing that na there's a possibility that funds will go back to the Philippines, if you are a retail investor right now, habang hinihintay natin mangyari yun, kasi hindi rin naman natin alam gaano katagal, ano dapat action plan nila? What should be their strategy? If it were you, while we're waiting for all of this, anong pwedeng gawin?
One of the best things to do right now would be to try to learn about technical analysis siguro. Try to understand how you can interpret price charts because these are the tools that you can really use to determine whether things are going back to normal or things are likely to go up soon or things are likely to go down further. So I think that's something that investors should try to learn, especially if they're serious about stock market investing or even trading. It's a good idea to learn more about it kasi we can derive signals from technical analysis talaga. One of the things that I've noticed in our market right now kasi is that it's currently mired in a descending triangle pattern, which is considered parang more of bearish pattern. So, if you are familiar with technical analysis, you can use that as a signal to enter. Pagka na-break yung descending triangle pattern na yun, that probably signals that the market is set to go higher instead of lower. Kasi fundamentally, a lot of stocks are relatively cheaper right now naman. So, from that perspective alone, madami ka nang pwedeng piliin. Kaya lang kung limited lang ang funds mo or if you want to maximize the growth potential of your funds, it's a good idea to combine fundamentals with technicals para mas maganda yung end.
Umakyat na nga yung market, some of them yung medyo maganda yung fundamentals ng earnings at least prior to this pandemic, they also got hit. What do you suggest people do? Large cap stocks or dun sa mga medyo smaller, make price action but not as liquid also?
I would suggest na you stick with the larger or mid cap stocks na lang. Kasi back in March, nearly every stock went down anyways. Walang kumbaga the drop did not spare any company, whether you're a large company or a smaller company. You went down because of the lockdowns, because of the fear surrounding the pandemic. And so even up to this day, there's not a lot of blue chip companies that have recovered greatly. So there are still a lot of blue chip companies that are relatively cheap from a valuation perspective. Uh, so in terms of risk reward, especially if you're more of an investor instead of a trader, it makes much more sense to focus on the larger cap to mid cap stocks that have good growth potential in the future, that are well established, and especially if they've been able to withstand past recessions na, di ba? So it makes more sense to me to allocate your funds there. No? To allocate at least a majority of your funds there.
A lot of the banking stocks have been battered up until now. No, yung madaming ibang sectors and stocks from other industries have gone down but have recovered a bit. Pero a lot of even the larger banks, they're at their, I think, lower portion of the range. If we're talking to investors now, if you are an investor, would you suggest that investors pick them up and then just wait na lang until mag-recover, or to stay away from it first until better data figures would come out? I guess people are waiting for yung percentages ng loans, yung defaults, or yung at least yung earnings growth or yung loan growth also from these banking establishments.
Yeah, so we have to understand that one of the biggest revenue drivers of banks is yung interest income nila, di ba? And that is essentially derived from loans, from the money that they loan to consumers. So most of these loans are either mga discretionary purchases like houses or cars, or business loans. So those are all directly correlated with how the economy is performing. So even if the BSP naman is trying to lower interest rates to make borrowing more attractive for individuals, we have to understand that it might be best to see if the economy is recovering fast enough. Kasi yung mga bigger companies, they're essentially going to be safe, diba? What's not as sure as the recovery of the bigger companies are the MSMEs. And they actually make up a huge portion of our businesses here, especially the further out of Luzon or NCR you go, the more you will see na mas malaki yung effect ng mga MSMEs na yan. So we have to take into account yung totality of the situation. It's best if we take a larger view of the economy when it comes to analyzing siguro these finance stocks, no? Kasi they cover essentially the whole Philippines. So we cannot just say that NCR is recovering and so things are going to get better. We have to make sure that provinces all over the country are also starting to recover, are starting to generate more revenues. And sometimes ang problema, these provinces are more tourism based, di ba? They derive their value from visitors, not necessarily from their locals lang. So hangga't hindi pa bumabalik yung mga ganong normal talaga, baka hindi inclined yung local economies nila na mag-open up or mag-expand ng kanilang businesses, which in turn will affect yung mga finance stocks, banking stocks na yan, kasi they thrive off of those things. Kaya siguro when it comes to finance stocks, better to see first that indeed maganda na yung growth ng GDP natin, and that the GDP growth is not just limited to NCR or the major cities, but rather mas more dispersed siya to other provinces.
Highly connected to banking, what's your take on property? Considering it's all over the news that we've seen a lot of POGOs leave, no? With the combination of so many factors. Sila rin nag-drive din ng commercial space and then yung retail, residential space also kasi they would house their employees here. Then it's the connection of the property space also to retail, since there's a lot of malls also that traffic is not so strong. Then connecting it also to remittances, because there's a lot of people na they were OFWs and then they had to go home. Yun sana yung either bibili ng bahay or naghuhulog dun sa bahay nila. And lastly, connecting it also to a lot of work from home, which would increase yung rentals for office spaces also.
Definitely, it's going to be highly affected. In terms of the property sector naman, we actually feel like things are going to get better for it. But of course, you have to take into consideration, yun nga. Right now kasi, it's not a matter of whether the property companies are going to recover, especially the larger ones. We can confidently believe naman that they will be able to move past this pandemic. The question lang talaga is how soon can they do it? So that's one of the biggest things that we, as investors, have to consider. Ayala Land, SMPH, all of these property real estate companies are going to perform well in the future, especially if you take the current market prices into consideration. It's very likely that they will improve in the future. The problem lang is how soon, kasi nga this enemy that we're fighting, kumbaga, is very dynamic. We've seen here in the province, for example, we've seen areas that have slightly reverted back to more stricter guidelines in terms of community quarantine. So,
Whoa!
yeah, so merong ganon. Merong iba na dati you are free to go outside na. Not necessarily Davao, but you're free to go outside to the malls now without any passes, without any of those things. But since they've experienced a slight spike in their number of cases, they had to revert back to a coding system, coding scheme. So that immediately limits again the revenue possibility of these malls, these commercial spaces, these offices. So parang pwede kasing mag-start-stop yung maging labas nito kasi the enemy is a health-related one. So it's dynamic. It's something that we cannot really eradicate just because we print more money or we, di ba? So hindi ganun, hindi siya solvable by that, unlike other recessions. Kaya that's something that investors are being very, very cautious about. Kaya even if we believe that the property sector will perform well in the future and the bigger property companies will survive this pandemic, we cannot definitively say when. So as an investor, you have to be prepared, especially if you're not using technical analysis. If you're not riding the momentum, if you're not going with where the demand is, you have to be prepared to hold for a longer period of time. Pero at least right now, ano naman, things are definitely much brighter than nung March, nung April, when we didn't know when the lockdowns would end. Now we see that the government is actively trying to stimulate naman din the economy. So they're trying to find the perfect balance between protection from the virus and restarting the economy. So medyo may clearer idea na tayo. Kaya nung, di ba, nung nag-revert back to 2-week ECQ si NCR, the market naman didn't go back down to 4,000, di ba? They dipped slightly but not enough to push it back below 4,000 because people have a better idea na of what to expect, unlike nung March when we didn't know what would happen.
People are getting used to it na parang wala na eh. Feeling ko matagal pa to bago mawala. So masanay na lang ako dito, maging careful na lang ako. And that's what I've been seeing that's been happening. Pero that being said, I think even if the vaccine comes second quarter next year, ang haba ng pila eh. How do you make 8 billion cures and vaccines for people? So, eto question ko, should mag-drag on pa to until late next year? Paano na yung airline stocks? Paano na yung malls? What's your sense on that?
The outlook for malls is a bit brighter naman than airlines kasi sa malls it's a bit easier because your kalaban lang talaga is you have to wear the protective measures. You have to wear your face shield, your face mask. Unlike sa airline na if you decide to travel right now, even if your end destination is a safe place naman, for example, you're going to a more progressive country like Singapore, like South Korea, safe naman doon, but that the process of getting there is tedious, diba? Especially if you're going to travel for leisure. The process there is tedious. You have to take the swab test before. So I think that's why it's a bit more easy to be disincentivized as an airline traveler as opposed to a mall goer wherein the process is much easier.
Based on what's happening kasi, I'm seeing a lot of people na dating nagbebenta sa mall, nakita nila bibili naman pala yung tao online. Why put it in the mall? If I sell it online, I keep all of my margins. Do you think when things get better, they will still go back to the mall, or you will see a lot of them na why increase my overhead or share my margins with these malls when I can keep everything myself and just go online?
The reach of the malls is still much, much higher. So
Mm.
right now, especially in our current setup we're in, not everyone has proper access to the
Good point.
internet. Not everyone is properly educated pa when it comes uh, to technology. I think these malls still serve a huge purpose. No? They still address a huge need for people where they can physically see what they are about to buy. They can just simply go there. If they only have cash, di ba? If they don't have ATMs, if they don't have credit cards, and their only mode of payment is cash, uh, meron pa ding may big value pa din. Kaya I'm even here where we're situated in a mall. Our office is inside an Ayala mall. So as the city started reopening its economy, we've started to see an increase din in the number of people in the foot traffic here inside the mall, and people are essentially still opting to buy in malls instead of online if they can do so.
If there's one technique that you use when you trade, uh, what is it? And is there anything that you want to share so that those that are watching this somehow can, yan yung style niya. Pag-aralan ko kaya. By the way, guys, if you're watching this is not a tip. It's you parang learning from what Robbie has also so that somehow you get to glean on yung kanyang expertise also.
One thing is technical analysis talaga, and especially in this time where a lot of days are essentially just trading sideways. The market is just trading sideways. It would serve us really well, I think, if we were able to learn how to trade with the momentum. So yung the classic buy on breakout strategies are very applicable right now, especially in this time of low volumes, di ba? We need to make sure that when we buy, we are buying with the crowd so that there will be enough momentum, enough strength for the stock to go further up. So I think that's something that we have to be able to identify yung trends. We have to know whether we are in an uptrend, downtrend, or sideways trend. And I think if we are able to do that, that will help us. That will help answer a lot of our investment questions, such as when do I buy, when do I sell.
Got it. Follow up on that. No, you said momentum breakouts. There's no right or wrong for this. Pero what do you use in terms of plotting your resistance? Do you draw your own line? Do you use a moving average? Do you use Bollinger Bands? Do you use Fibonacci? What's your style for it?
Well, I combine yung drawing ko, yung my own personal drawing of the horizontal support and resistance lines, as well as the Fibonacci retracement lines. So one thing kasi is that I think if it's a static support or resistance, meaning when we say static, yung hindi siya parang moving average na it moves. It's just there. So once you plot it there, it's going to be there na, and it's horizontal mostly. So I think horizontal support and resistance lines are stronger than the diagonal ones naman. So you just need to plot kung saan madaming points na nagko-connect. And once you are able to identify which points have the most connections, no, that establishes the support or resistance better, and that makes the ensuing breakout or breakdown from those levels much more significant. So we can really, I think we can really simplify our trading when we are able to identify those levels.
Got it. Guys, for those who don't know Robbie Celebrity, you'll see him in ANC or in One News Network talking about the markets. And knowing that you're a TV personality, what's your biggest mistake in the market, and what's also your greatest achievement also?
My biggest achievement is definitely learning how to use technical analysis. So there are still some people, and understandably it can be intimidating at first because it's very visual. So when you see a stock chart, especially if it's your first time investing, it's a bit intimidating talaga to see all of these lines, all of these candles, all of these things moving around. But it really is going to be very advantageous for you to at least try to learn it. That's my biggest advantage, or that's my biggest achievement siguro when it comes to stock trading.
Yeah,
It's the
sobrang
fact that
yaman eh.
there din no. No. Pero it really helped. It really helped kasi I was able to weed out the underperformers from the outperformers because of that. Kaya I think it's worthwhile. It's not necessarily, it's easy to learn. It's hard to master. And yan, you have resources like Sir Marvin's books out there easily available, di ba? So, ano siya, it's simplified di ba? Parang you can really actually use it. You can take the time to learn it, and it should make sense to you quite quickly. So, all you need to do is just keep at it and practice lang. Siguro, the other end naman is ang biggest failure ko in stock trading is not realizing sooner naman that we need to be able to be comfortable with cutting our losses. That's something kasi that is very, very hard for us to come to terms with, especially if it's our first time, or especially if we're used to not losing or not always winning. You have to understand that the market is dynamic. No? You cannot control it. Kumbaga. There is no way to control the market. You can just manage your risk when it comes to trading or investing in the stock market. And so, because of that fact, we have to learn how to cut our losses. Essentially, that's an acknowledgement that we made a mistake and that things are not going our way. And so we have to find another opportunity na lang. Kasi otherwise, it can lead to larger losses, and that's something that I've learned painfully over the years, no? Especially when I was starting out with the more active form of trading.
Do you have a threshold na pag hindi ko pa to na-cut ng ganitong percentage, sobrang mali na yung ginawa ko, na parang by this percentage out ka na dapat talaga nun?
Hindi ko lang siya pinapalagpas ng 10%. So, as much as possible, if I can limit my losses to 5%, meaning if I can buy it as close to the support as possible, in which I will only lose 5%, then better. But if not, yun, the hard line is 10%. I don't let my losses exceed 10% because it would be very hard to make up for it na afterwards. And then the losses might be too big that will hinder me from selling. Psychologically, the effect might be damaging to me because when I see the amount na malulose niya, pag 10% na siya or more, baka hindi na ako inclined mag-cut ng losses.
What if may tao na 10,000 yung linagay, lost 50%, meaning lost 5,000? Since it's only 5,000 naman, would you recommend na tanggalin mo na yan? 5,000 pesos naman, kahit 50% siya.
I would say stick to the percentages pa din. So whether 10% means just a 1,000 peso loss for you, you still cut, even if it's supposedly tolerable. Kasi you're not building good trading habits. How can you expect to trade a larger amount in the future if with a smaller amount you're not able to do something yourself already? So just because the absolute value of your loss is not significant, pero more than 10% na pala siya, you really have to cut pa din based on your threshold in terms of percentage. Because you need to develop that habit of cutting losses in terms of percentage. It gives you an incentive to make better entry points in the future. Gives you an incentive to respect your money, your market. You don't belittle your money. Diba? Hindi mo minamaliit yung 1,000 because 1,000 is still 1,000. So, gano'n. So, stick with the percentages. Even if hindi pa masakit, kahit 50% loss, hindi masakit. That won't serve you well in the future.
Great insights. And I will just end it with this. Okay, fast talk. One answer lang based on this. First question. Lakers Nuggets.
Lakers.
Jordan LeBron.
Jordan.
Investing trading.
Trading.
Dividends capital appreciation.
Capital appreciation.
PLDT Globe dito.
Globe.
Now dito.
Dito.
Wait longer, stay in cash.
Stay in cash.
10 million pesos earning 10% or 1 million pesos earning 100%?
1 million pesos earning 100.
Overdiversified, underdiversified.
Underdiversified.
Banking stocks, property stocks.
Property stock.
Love or money?
Love, syempre.
Okay, thank you so much, Robbie Samson, First Metro Securities. I hope you guys learned a lot from this. Oh. Actually, mas masaya yung mas gusto ko yung last part. Mas masaya yung fast talk also. So thank you for sharing your insights, and I hope you guys got a lot from this, and I hope it added also value for you, and I hope this video helps you trade well, trade strong, trade smart. See you all again soon, and God bless you all.